If you are a rugby fan anywhere in the world at the moment, you'll be absolutely amazed, like I am, how much rugby we've got going on, and in particular international rugby that's going to be going on for the next 6 months. So make sure you stay with me here on Inside Rugby with Mark as I cover as much of that as I possibly can, giving you video content on a daily basis as we head through the next 6 months. Now in today's video I'm going to talk about the Lions tour in Australia. They had their first game against the Western Force in Perth on the weekend. Going to give you my thoughts around that, and what Andy Farrell's doing with this Lions squad is pretty impressive. Let's get on to the video right now. G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. Just a quick one, if you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan, but I live in beautiful Cancun in Mexico, about as far away from New Zealand as you can get. And it's a beautiful part of the world. If you're ever in town around here, give me a call and I'll come and have a drink with you. We'll talk about some rugby and get into it. But in the meantime, let's talk about the Lions tour of Australia. It's got underway this past weekend with Andy Farrell's group hitting the beautiful city of Perth in Western Australia as they got their first game underway. Now the Lions had that first game against Aviva Stadium, and of course they didn't quite hit their straps in that one, losing by a very close margin in that game against Argentina. But now they're in Australia and they're starting to make their build up to that 3 test match series that's going to take place against the Wallabies, that I for one are getting very, very excited about. So the game was against the Western Force. Of course, they're a Super Rugby franchise playing out of Perth in Western Australia. That's about as far that way in Australia as you can possibly get. And it's a long flight across the country to the east coast from the beautiful West Australian capital city of Perth, where I've actually enjoyed living for about 4 or 5 years in my earlier days. Now, what are the chances that we have 2 international rugby games on the same day and the score is exactly the same? Well, that's what we saw in the weekend. We saw the Australian Western Force team take on the British Lions, and the final score was 54 points to 7. And then we saw the Springboks against the Barbarians in Cape Town, and the final score was 54 points to 7. I don't know how many people would have bet on that happening. There would have been a few good odds on that one, I'm sure. So 54 points to 7. How did it start off with the Lions? Well, I saw a completely different Lions outfit in Perth in the weekend than I saw at the Aviva Stadium, and all that rust and those combinations that they were struggling to find at the Aviva Stadium had come together, and they really started to take it up a level. And what Andy Farrell's doing with this group has got me really excited, because we've got the best players from the home nations coming together in this Lions squad, and we've seen in this particular game the intent of what this team is all about, and that means quick movement of the ball, quick in the turnout phases, and then get the ball out wide and do a lot of creativity, and we saw that throughout this match in Perth. Now, typically what happens when the home nations teams come to Australia, they take a game or two to get used to the hard grounds in Australia. Of course, the climatical conditions are very different to what they're used to be playing their rugby on, and the stadium they played on in the weekend was rock hard, and I think this was a really good thing for the Lions. These are small margins, but they're very important things, and if you want to play a particular style of play, an open, expansive play, then the Australian grounds are very, very good for that. So Andy Farrell has brought his intention to Australia that this Lions group is going to play open, expansive rugby at pace, and we saw the speed of this game pick up as the game went on. And I tell you what, I was very impressed, first of all, with the fitness level of these particular players. They've flown all the way out there from Ireland. They got acclimatised to Australia, got themselves into the sleeping zone, and they came out hitting the ground running in the weekend against the Western Force. And it didn't take too long for the Lions to really ramp it up. The first half, there was still some indications there that some of the passes weren't working, the combinations, but then they got really into the game. The forwards started to dominate, and then as a result of that, the likes of Mitchell and Finn Russell in the back line, along with Tui Piloto, but particularly out wide, I was super impressed with Mac Hansen. He had a fantastic game on the wing. The Irishman, or Australian/Irishman, thought he played extremely well, along with James Lowe and also Elliot Daly, who played at fullback this weekend. It was an exceptional performance by those 3 at the back. I thought they showed every time they got the ball they were very, very dangerous, particularly Mac Hansen, but also was very impressed with Hansen's defence, and on a number of occasions you saw him making the extra effort to get back and saving the Lions on the last-ditch effort in the defensive line. And that's something that Andy Farrell was very, very happy with. He made mention of it after the game, with the intensity that they put into off-the-ball play as well as on-the-ball play. And I think it was a really, really good performance from the Lions. There were some standout players, as there are in any game, and I've just written down a few here that I want to highlight with you first of all. And I guess the first one is the new star is born, and it's Henry Pollock, the young 20-year-old number 8 who absolutely had a storming game for the Lions. And if there's any doubt that this guy has got some huge potential, well, he showed it all on the park there in Perth in the weekend. I was very impressed with his play and open play, but also the way that he was hungry for the ball all the time. He reminds me a little bit of Wallace Satiti. They've got a lot of characteristics that are the same. But Pollock was very energised in this particular game. His skill set was very high, and he got into a couple of open breaks and used his brain very cleverly to get the ball back to his supporting players, one of which led to a very good try from the Lions. So I was extremely impressed by Henry Pollock, and it's going to be interesting now as we go through this series in Australia how much Andy Farrell is going to get behind this young kid and give him a chance. Is he going to get a test start? That's going to be a really interesting one. Let me know in the comments, based on Pollock's performance this past weekend, if you see him getting an opportunity to be selected in one of the test teams. I'd like to hear your opinions on that. But also in the forwards, we saw great performances, I thought, from a couple of the forwards that stood out in my opinion. Joe McCarthy had a brilliant game yet again. I don't know if I've ever watched Joe McCarthy have a bad game of rugby at international level. This was outstanding again. He was great in the lineouts, he was great in open play, he was quick in the turnover play as well, but ably supported by Josh van der Flair, who I thought also had another great game. Wasn't mentioned so much by a lot of the commentary, but he was in there doing some very, very good work and setting up the ball quickly for the Lions to be able to use out in their inner channels, particularly when Finn Russell took on the line with Tui Piloto. It was van der Flair who was on the outside of some of those decisions on the breakdown, and that was really, really good work from him. I thought Callagher played well when he came on as well as a substitute. Started to really impress in some of the open play as the Western Force were tiring, and that's exactly the impact that I think Andy Farrell will want to have from his substitutes. Dan Sheehan, getting his first run for the Lions in Australia, had a fantastic game, scored one of those Dan Sheehan tries as well. Very, very well supported, and he's looking very dangerous. So I was really impressed across the park with this team. Probably Marcus Smith was the only one that I was like, ho-hum. And I'm not a huge Marcus Smith fan anyway. I think Finn Russell is fantastic in that 10 jersey. He's the maestro. He's the one that can really deliver on setting that back line apart. And when you've got Tui Piloto, and we had Hugh Jones come on in the second half as well, and he looked really, really dangerous. But Gary Ringrose did some great stuff in the first half as well. So with the likes of Ringrose and Hugh Jones, the Lions have got a super depth of talent out of their midfield. And we talked about also the wings that played fantastically well, both James Lowe and Mac Hansen in this game. Elliot Daly had a good one at fullback. So I was really impressed with this Lions performance in the weekend. This is going to set them up nicely for their midweek game this week against the Queensland Reds. That's going to be played in Brisbane, which is also the venue for the first test match against Australia. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, first of all, who Andy Farrell is going to play in this game against the Queensland Reds, and how they go, whether they're going to be able to back that up with another high energy, high impact game like they played against the Western Force. The Western Force did what they could. They scored a try in the first half to keep it respectable on the scoreboard for 10 or 15 minutes, but once the Lions really got into gear, it was a steamroller. And as we saw with the Springboks against the Barbarians, it was a very similar type of performance from the Lions. They were very impactful up front. They were winning line-out ball. They were good in the scrums. But it was the clean-out and the speed of the clean-out and the turnovers which were fantastic, enabling their inside backs to really get off on the front foot. And that's why we saw a lot of Mac Hansen, James Lowe and Elliot Daly in this game, because they were getting a lot of ball out wide that was ably set up by the forwards in the middle. I thought Mitchell also did well at halfback. He got a try in the second half as well, when at that stage the Lions were home and hosed. There was only every player putting up their hand to score another try, and that's the way that it was going. So this is a very different look of style of play from the Lions. Usually they're using their power up front and dominating teams through the forwards, and then Good set piece play leads to good positional play, but we're seeing an expansive game, and Andy Farrell obviously has this Lions team very much in the mindset of let's use the ball in a creative fashion. He wants these players to express themselves. He knows he's got a lot of talent right across the path in this Lions team, and if he can get the ball up front to be moving into the hands of the likes of Finn Smith and Tui Piloto and Hugh Jones and the others out wide, we're going to see a lot of points scored in every game from this Lions team, and they're going to be very difficult to beat as far as the Wallabies go. At the moment, here we are after their first game. I've still got it 50-50 between who I think is going to win that first test match. I think the Wallabies are doing incredibly under Joe Schmidt, and I expect that reign to continue throughout this Lions series. But this Lions team is very, very good, and they're playing some very attractive rugby. So let's see what happens in Wednesday's game against the Queensland Reds, whether that intensity level can still be there, and then I'll give you my thoughts and opinions after they've played in that particular match. So if I was to rank this performance from the Lions out of 10, I'd give them a 9.5. I think they did everything very, very well. There's not much to pick on, I think, in terms of there's still just a couple of occasions in the first half where the combinations didn't work, but you're going to get that in every rugby game. So I'm being a little bit picky. It should have been a 9.95 performance, I think. But the key now is to see whether they can keep that momentum going as they build towards that first test against the Wallabies in Brisbane in a few weeks' time. As I said earlier, I'm looking forward to seeing what a lot of these players can do on the very hard tracks in Australia, because they can really show their explosiveness and their pace, and I think we're going to see this throughout the Lions tour down under. We're going to see some of these players go to another level of speed and accuracy, because these dry grounds will enable them to do that, and it's going to be really interesting to see whether we get a dry, hard, fast ground in Brisbane on Wednesday. Now, if you're following the Lions tour and you're from one of the home nations, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you thought about the game difference in terms of performance from the one against Argentina at the Aviva Stadium versus this one against the Western Force. If you didn't see the game against the Western Force, go and check out the highlights on YouTube. It's well worth watching to see some of those interplay by the Lions players and also their accuracy when it came to their attack. The standout again for me was Pollock, but I put Mac Hansen up there as well, having a very, very good game for the Lions. But there was a lot of good players across the park, and I don't want to just single out one in particular. I think this was a very good team performance that showed the team coming together after that first narrow loss to Argentina at the Aviva Stadium. Now, if they can continue building the momentum on that as the series goes forward in Australia, I think they're going to be extremely difficult to beat. Let me know in the comments also whether you think the Lions are going to beat the Wallabies in this series. Is it going to be 2-1? Is it going to be 2-1 to Australia? Or is it going to be 3-0 to the Lions? I'd like to hear your variations and predictions, so make sure you let me know in the comments. As I said, I'll be back again after the Wednesday game against the Queensland Reds, give you my views and opinions on that. But plenty more coming up here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that button now. Give this video a thumbs up and a like, and follow along the journey, because we've got some amazing international rugby happening over the next 6 months in 2025. I'll be back again soon with some more content. Till then, it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. See you all again soon. Bye for now.